You must love podcasts if you're listening to this. Do you want to start your own one or you already have one? Then follow Smarter Podcasting to get expert advice from me, Neil Mackay, the podcast guy. Since 2019, we've worked with over 40 podcasters, produced over 700 episodes, and helped many podcasts get to the top of the Apple Podcast charts. And right now, I'm offering you a professional edit for just $27. Click the link in the show notes. I have a controversial question for you that I've never asked anyone before. What do you define as a podcast?
Good question.
Welcome back to Smarter Podcasting with me, your host, Neil Mackay, the podcast guy. I've been on a short break, so thank you very much for everyone who's continued to listen. We posted some podcasts, which are really valuable episodes that have been posted in the past, but we brought them back to you. And so I hope you really enjoyed them. And thank you if you're a regular listener and if you're tuning in for the first time as well. Thank you so much. I've been creating podcasts since 2019. I started my first podcast just as a hobby. It was called a Saigon podcast. It's now a Vietnam podcast, and it's crazily made it into the top 5% of podcasts worldwide. It's the longest running English language podcast in Vietnam. And I've met some incredible people through that, and I learned some amazing skills. So from then, I created 7 Million Bikes podcasts, and we have now worked with over 60 podcasts across the world, helped produce, I think now over 1,000 episodes, helped with millions of downloads, and got podcasts to the top of the charts as well. So now in this podcast, Smarter Podcasting, I'm going to share with you all my tips, my tricks, my failures, and talk to experts in the podcasting industry to help you make the best podcast possible. Now, in this episode today, I say this, I think, every episode, but I am genuinely really, really excited to talk to this person because we're going to be talking today about organic short-form content for social media marketing, which I would assume if you're in the podcasting world, you understand that over the past year, this has been all the rage. It's a massive game changer. We do it on all our podcasts. Every podcast we make, we offer one free short-form content for every episode. And most clients want us to make more because they're so valuable. So, for example, one of the podcasts we did, I'll be really honest, the main episode on YouTube, I think got like 50 views. And one of the short form content videos got over 10,000 views. So when you start to add that up, you can reach way more people. So my guest today, he's a Kiwi, which I love talking to Kiwis. If you know me, I used to live in New Zealand. I call myself a token Kiwi. He's one of New Zealand's top podcast marketers. He's responsible for marketing award-winning shows like Between Two Beers, which we've had the host of that show on here before. He does the Dom Harvey podcast, as well as top-ranking shows like Sports Cafe, The Good, The Bad, and the Rugby ANZ, and Lead on Purpose with James Laughlin and School Shots. So today we are going to be talking about, as I mentioned, organic short-form social media marketing with Marcus Logan. Marcus, thank you for joining me today on Smarter Podcasting.
Thank you very much for having me, mate. Excited to be here.
It's good to talk to, I was going to say a fellow Kiwi, but I'm being disingenuous because I'm clearly by my accent from Scotland. But how's life in Auckland right now?
It's great. It's great. I love Auckland. I love New Zealand. And no complaints really.
And how is podcasting in New Zealand right now?
It is taking off in New Zealand. We here in New Zealand, we're quite slow adopters to international trends. Most of the time we're about, 4 or 5 years behind major things that happen in the US and the UK culturally. So the podcast boom has kind of just arrived in New Zealand. So more and more people are entering, more and more media companies are starting podcasts, and more advertisers are coming and sponsoring. So yeah, happy days. It's taking off here.
It's really, really exciting. And it's crazy to hear that. I mean, you're talking these terms of 4 or 5 years. As I was talking to you before the start of the show, I crazily have been in Vietnam for 9 years now, which was never the plan. I left New Zealand for 1 year, was going to go back, and then suddenly 9 years later, I'm still in Vietnam. It's crazy to think where podcasting was 9 years ago. When I left New Zealand, I couldn't think of any podcast I would listen to in New Zealand. I listened to the Serial podcast, about Adnan Syed, which was 2014, which was in the boom of podcasts again. But apart from that, I can't remember anything in New Zealand. And even just talking to my wife recently, I mentioned how I started my podcast in 2019. She's like, yeah, you started yours really early. And I was like, I didn't start it early. I was like, so 2019. She's like, no, that was like pretty early. And I was like, oh shit, so it was. So what's the trends that you're seeing right now in New Zealand?
Yeah, the trends are lots of kind of traditional media companies are now entering the space and launching kind of new sub brands that are specifically podcasts, and lots of media personalities that may have been on TV or the radio or in other kind of mainstream media are now launching podcasts. A, because it's becoming more profitable here in New Zealand, and B, the traditional media landscape here in New Zealand, I'm not sure if you're too aware of it, but our major media companies have been struggling a lot. Basically, every regional newspaper in New Zealand is now shut down. One of our main news channels has been shut down. There's hundreds of people in that industry looking for work and who now have the freedom to pursue other projects. So, yeah, like I said, the space is just kind of flying and it's getting more and more competitive. But also more and more opportunities now in the space with more advertisers, etc. So yeah, everyone in New Zealand is starting a podcast, basically.
I do feel part of that worldwide and in New Zealand is the barrier to entry is quite low for podcasts. It always has been, but the results I would say were quite amateurish, and I include myself in that. When I started in 2019, I just started with a microphone, and 5 years later, I'm still amateur, but a better amateur. But now the price of things like headphones has gone down, price of microphones has gone down. Even now with mobile phones are so much better than when I left 9 years ago. I'm recording 4K right now through a mobile phone. I feel like that barrier to entry has become so low that it makes it even easier for people to come in and at a high standard. But I have a controversial question for you that I've never asked anyone before. I've just thought of it. What do you define as a podcast?
Good question, because like, for example, one of my clients last year was a show called Sports Cafe, which was a TV show back in the 90s, early 2000s that we relaunched as a podcast. But essentially, it's a TV show that's made for YouTube primarily, but we took the audio and distributed that as a podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's called a podcast, but it's not really a traditional podcast. So I think we're going to see more and more of that. You know, streaming has become huge, and quite often streamers will take moments from their streams and upload the audio to a podcast feed. So yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, it's a recorded piece of content that is distributed on podcast streaming apps, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it is a podcast, because a podcast could be almost anything these days.
It's so complicated, right? I mean, it kind of showed how I had started quite early. I was like, no, it's audio only. It has to have an RSS feed, and anything else isn't a podcast. And now I've completely done a 180, but now for me, it is video. I'm doing video right now with you. So if you're listening to this podcast, thank you. But you can also go check it out on YouTube as well, because that's the way ahead. Every single client now I work with, they come to me and they say they want to make a podcast, and I still forget that they mean video, and it's so much more complicated. And I'm now looking at like the pricing that I'm giving, and I'm like, I need to charge more, because video adds so much more work to the whole process. I read an article about this kind of topic, and because young people these days, they do still listen to podcasts. I don't mean they don't listen to podcasts, but for some people who are TikTok fans, they only see these short form clips that we're about to talk about. And so for some people, a podcast is anything with a microphone. It doesn't matter where they're listening to it, where they're consuming it, how they're consuming it, because they're seeing these clips on TikTok or Instagram. They see somebody with a microphone. They're never going to go watch the full episode. They're never going to listen to it, but they will know that is a podcast.
Yeah, and a funny trend that's happening is people will record content that looks like it's from a podcast, but it's not actually a podcast, but they just use it as a clip, as a standalone piece of content on, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, etc. So it's like fake podcast clips is a content vehicle these days, which is quite bizarre, but just speaks to the power of the format, right?
Are you referencing the V-Shred guy? Because I've mentioned him a lot.
I'm not too sure. Not sure I
You
know
don't
about
know
the
about
V
this one?
Shred guy. Nah, I need to do my
I can't even
research.
remember his real name. So he basically did exactly what you said. He faked being on the Joe Rogan podcast for a clip. So he's one
Yeah.
of these guys that says, like, do you want to get ripped like me? You're training all wrong. You've got to do my program. And I'm sure his program is great. Like, I'm sure it works. Like, he looks great. But he does these clips and videos and things like this, marketing, right? It's fine. It's marketing. I'm not like having a knock at the guy. But there's one clip that he does with the exact same red curtain as the background of Joe Rogan, same microphone, which is not difficult to find out, same headphones, same stance. And he's just talking and saying like a line. And you see it, and it goes back to as well. We've just had the presidential the podcast. What was it called? The president podcasts election cycle. I can't remember how they termed it, but
Yeah.
because the presidential candidates all went on podcasts, showing the legitimacy of podcasts. But this guy, fake being on Joe Rogan, because again, people see that little clip and they go, I mean, I thought it as well. I was like, oh wow, he was on Joe Rogan. So that, I mean, I don't know why I would give anyone credence because of being on Joe Rogan, because it means nothing. But he faked that so that you think he's been on podcast. So that's what I thought you were referencing, maybe there.
No, it's similar thing. But I mean, hey, smart. If it gets some attention, that's what we're all trying to get. It's the attention economy. So got to do what you got to do, I suppose.
Exactly. So we got connected because I'd interviewed Steve Holloway from the Two Beers podcast, and I knew that through because I'm a token Kiwi and I see what happens in New Zealand, and we just had a great interview. And partly I'd seen his stuff on LinkedIn, and I'd seen you post on LinkedIn about how you guys had connected and you'd really helped take their podcast to the next level. And so we got talking, and I was like, hey, I want to learn more from you and I want to talk to you. So tell me a bit about that story. How did you get connected with those guys? How did you build them up? What were the results? And why is that social media short form content so crucial now?
So I worked at a marketing agency down in Hamilton I started there in 2021. This is the last job I had before I started my business. And Seamus, one of the hosts of the Between Two Beers podcast, was a colleague there. And we got really close and became really good friends. And he had the podcast running then. It wasn't necessarily, wasn't anywhere near what it is now. It was a side hobby that he was doing. I was kind of aware of it. A few times I'd said, oh, you should do this on social media, da-da-da. He didn't really pay too much attention. But eventually I ended up leaving the agency and starting my own social media agency. Seamus, he left that job, but was continuing to battle away with the podcast. And then one day he just texted me out of the blue and said, hey, bro, would you be keen to help us out with social media? And my initial thought was, not sure. I've never done podcast marketing before. But eventually I just said, yes, absolutely. So I started by creating this strategy for them that essentially helped help them to distribute more short form content across more of the social media channels and being more strategic with what we would share. And so I compiled this big strategy for them, presented it to them, and they were like, holy shit, amazing, let's do it. And so got to work straight away. And that was about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago now. And they started out at about, 3,000 followers on Instagram, 2,000 on Facebook, 1,000 on TikTok, a couple thousand on YouTube. But now they've got over 100,000 across all these platforms. And we're just growing more and more. So it's been incredible and has opened so many doors for them and for myself. And credit to them for kind of trusting the ideas that I had and being willing to back them, because it's really paying off for them now. The opportunities that come about from a large social media presence are massive and unprecedented, really. And it's just been an incredible ride to be part of. They're so good at what they do that it makes marketing it pretty easy, to be honest. It's just, matching up a few best practices, and the rest is kind of history.
Amazing. I have, I think, 3, maybe 4 follow-up questions on that, which I'm going to have to try and remember. So first one is, without giving away, obviously, the secret to what you do, it's your job and not expecting you to do that. But what is the secret sauce of creating clips? Like, even I want to know that, because we do it, and some of them, as I mentioned in the beginning, do great, and some of them do average, and some of them do rubbish. And I haven't personally figured out, like, I think we make good clips. I haven't personally figured out what makes a great clip.
The secret to a great clip is a piece of content that requires no context for somebody to watch and get some kind of value out of it. So value could be entertainment, education, inspiration, but with no context required. So anybody from down the street, if they see a clip pop up from your podcast, without knowing who the speaker is, without knowing the account that's posted it, are they going to be able to interact with that piece of content and walk away having had some kind of value from it? Whether it's they laughed at it, shared it to their group chat, whether they learned something new, or whether it inspired them. So context is crucial, and it's one of the main problems I see with a lot of bad podcast marketing is they're assuming that their audience or that the public know or care about the people or the topics that they're talking about. And a lot of the time when a clip doesn't do well, it's because it's too kind of internally focused, whereas if you create something that's more universally relatable, understood, entertaining to a wide group of people, that's going to take off. It's about creating content that gets people sharing, talking about it. Yeah, that's how we approach it. And the longer that you can get somebody, and the longer that you can get somebody watching your clips too, makes a hell of a lot of difference. So it's all about the first 3 to 4 seconds. If you can hook someone into watching past that 3 or 4 second barrier, the platforms and the algorithms pick up that that's a decent piece of engagement with the content, and then they're going to push that further to more people. And then if those people watch it for a long amount of time too, it gets picked up and sent out to an even larger group of people. So yeah, that's kind of the way that I think about it.
And it makes sense because, I just think of my own habits when I'm thinking about these things. It literally takes less than 3 to 4 seconds to skip the clip as you're going through your reels. I'm an Instagrammer, I don't use TikTok, but as you're going through, you're just like, yep, no. And then you find something and you're like 3 or 4 seconds. Yeah, oh, okay, I'll watch it. So when you're going through the transcript or you're going through the episode, is that what you're looking for? Do you have like a construct? Do you have like trying to think of the word, but do you have an idea, a matrix of what you're looking for as you're going through the episode?
You're looking for attention-grabbing statements, natural beginnings to stories, setups to strong opinions, and then you're wanting to grab those moments and bring them straight to the front. Even if it's not in the natural flow of a conversation, there's still a way that you can use something as a hook to then add in a transition effect and then tell a full story. So I'm quite often looking for things that naturally pique my attention. And the bests are beginnings of stories, beginnings of jokes, controversial, bold opinion or a statement. And then, that's always what I'm looking for.
Now, I know that my editor is going to be editing this, Chelsea here, and I hope she's listening to this, and I know she will be, and we both are. This is such great information because we're both, I know, going to be talking about this afterwards and how do we create these clips. And I hope she goes back and she finds that part where I said to you, I have a controversial question for you. Would that be a good opening hook?
Absolutely, because, people are going to want to keep watching and figure out what the controversial question is, So that's exactly it.
So reverse engineering it back, do you and the team ever pre-plan? I hadn't pre-planned that, but it is a good one, I think. Do you have meetings before and you're like, hey, if you can just add this in, if you can say something about this topic, it's going to be good for the social media afterwards? I wanted to share with you about one of my favorite affiliate partners, and that is Fiverr. I've been using Fiverr for years for everything from ordering YouTube thumbnails to keyword research, writing podcast articles, even to Canva designs and thumbnails and more. So whether you're a budding entrepreneur, a podcaster, or anyone in between, Fiverr has got you covered. It really is the go-to platform if you want to find freelancers offering a massive range of services to help you on any project. Maybe you need a stunning new logo or just a short animation. Whatever you need, you can find it on Fiverr. What I love the most is how easy Fiverr makes it to connect with talented freelancers from around the world, all at prices that will fit whatever your budget is. Plus, with Fiverr's secure payment system, you can trust that your transactions are safe and secure. No dodgy people you meet on Facebook groups that disappear with your money and never give you what you want. What, that's only happened to me? As an affiliate partner, I will get a small commission if you use the link and at no extra cost to you. As an affiliate partner, I will get a small commission if you click my link and you buy something, all at no extra cost to you. And best of all, you will be directly supporting the making of this podcast that you're listening to for free, but it is not free to make. So why wait? Head over to somewhere that you've probably never been before. It's called the show notes. So whatever app you're listening in, if it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anything at all, head to the show notes, click on my special link, and then you can browse thousands of gigs ready to help you with your next project.
Potentially, not all the time. Most of my clients, they do a hell of a lot of pre-production. They do a lot of research. I know and trust that they're going to be touching on opinions that are going to be, widely interesting to a large group of people. So unless there's something that really stands out to me that I'm like, hey, make sure you ask them about this, whether it's something that's topical or in the news, or they've, gone viral for something that the hosts might not know about. Yeah, that's when I'd butt in, but typically they do such a good job that I rely on them asking the right questions and trust that they will, and then pick it up in the back end.
And my next question was, do you reformat or repurpose content based on the platform? So we've mentioned like TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, and then LinkedIn as well does more and more video content. That's 5 platforms right away. Do you do the same content on every one, or you repurpose it?
Slightly different content across each one. But for the most part, it's pretty, it's one piece of content with many purposes and many potential different audiences is how we think about it. So, and also the dominant form of content across all social media now is short form video. So we typically just populate all the short form video channels with our short form video content. So it's Facebook Reels, Instagram Reels, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and X, Twitter. Not so big here in New Zealand,
I've never used X or Twitter, so I completely forgot that existed.
Yeah, it's not so popular here in New Zealand, but for some clients we do post there as well. But typically, if one piece of content works really well on one platform, most of the time it's going to go on and do really well on another platform.
Right.
So and there's different audiences across all of these channels too. And the way that the algorithms are starting to work too, not all of your followers are going to see all of your content. So if you've got the same followers across, Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, and you're worried about them seeing the same post 3 times, more likely than not, they're not going to be seeing that content maybe even once, because now the algorithms work where you are fed the most viral content from across the planet from people that you don't follow, but for content that matches your interests. So when you're uploading to these platforms now, you're not just speaking to your follower base, you're speaking to the world potentially. So yeah, that's how we think about it.
And would you say that is a big difference with the short form content? Because when you post on your audio podcast, your RSS feed, pretty much, as far as I know, it's 90% plus. It's your followers who are going to get that, who are going to listen to the audio podcast. YouTube, I know, is a little bit different, like the long form videos, but it's generally going to be people that already subscribe to your channel. It's going to come up in their feed. Obviously, some people who don't follow you as well, they're going to find it too. But would you say that is the biggest difference with the short form content? Is you're reaching new people that don't follow you or subscribe to you?
Yeah. Every video that you post is a potential, lottery ticket to going viral if you do it the right way. So the reach and discoverability on social media platforms has never been higher. It's never been easier to go viral. It's never been easier to reach a huge audience organically without even paying for ads or anything, which is a massive revolution and just hugely disruptive to traditional media, to traditional social media. That's why TikTok has become so huge. And that's why all the other social media apps are following suit, because it rewards your creativity and it rewards the value that you're creating with your content, not necessarily rewarding you for having a lot of followers, but for creating really great stuff. So that's changing a hell of a lot. And then it's about using that potential reach and, breadcrumbing them back to the long form episode and converting that short form attention to long form attention and long form listens, downloads, repeat consumers as well.
So that is a great point you just made at the end. And it's actually what I was going to ask you next, which is another controversial question, because I haven't seen evidence to support this much, but I know it happens. How do you convert the short form listeners, the short form viewers back to the long form content? Because I'm not always convinced. Like, you may get a viral piece of content, you get hundreds of thousands of viewers on it, millions maybe. How many of them are going to find your audio podcast or find your YouTube channel and then become loyal listeners, followers, consumers?
It depends the quality of the short form content that you put out. Is it enticing enough to lead people to want to go and search for the full episode? How many clips does it take someone to watch to then go and find the full episode? These are things that we don't have any real strong data around. But for all of my clients, whenever we have a video or a clip or a post that goes viral, we see the correlation really clearly in the long form. So it's about creating content that's quality enough that meets the interests and the needs of your target audience so strongly that then they go and hunt that out. And then there are small things you can do to kind of try to convert that attention, calls to action. So one thing that we do for some of our clients is in the last 2 or 3 seconds of a clip, taking out the subtitles and putting on a little text tag saying watch or listen to the full episode, stating that again in the caption, linking it in your Instagram stories, Facebook stories, TikTok stories. Yeah, it's really important to do whatever you can to convert that, because you're right. A lot of attention does just die on a short form clip, but it's about being aware of that and doing as much as you can to convert that. But also it's long-term brand building too. The more engagement that you have on your social media channels, the more people that you are going to have the opportunity to convert into the future as well. So yeah, that is a bit of the missing bridge at the moment. It does exist. Yeah.
Yeah, somebody said to me lately, like, we were talking about something on this podcast, and he's like, "You're like a data guy, right?" And I was like, I don't really think about it, but I guess so. I do kind of follow the data. I look for just follow the numbers, and I just want to do what the numbers tell me, basically. And I've not seen specific numbers on that. It's good to see. So I assume that when you have a viral content, you're also seeing on your other platforms like an increase in followers and listens. It's on my podcast, I call it my hobby podcast, because I've made a tiny bit of money out of it over 5 years, but I don't make any significant money out of it at all. And I just love it, which is a Vietnam podcast. And I haven't checked February, but in December and January, we had our 2 highest months back to back ever. This 5 years after we started. And I was thinking why. And one of the things is we created a website, which we'd never had before. So now we direct people to the website. And I've read that, again, following the data, that websites are one of the best ways to build your podcast. We started doing video for the first time, really seriously, doing a lot more online, doing a lot more short form clips as well. And then I realized as well, it coincided with me going from 1 episode a week to 2 episodes a week. And I was like, oh yeah, that's probably a big driver in those massive months. But those are a lot of positive changes we've made. And so it's hard to pinpoint which one. I'm assuming they've all made a difference. Definitely doing 2 episodes a week has made a big difference, but not to the point of the numbers that we're seeing now. And it's exciting to see those changes make a difference. It's hard to say, oh, it's the online social media alone that's brought in listeners, but I would hope so, because to go back to your point you were saying, I think with podcasters, you have to decide your goals and what you want out of it, because there's one podcaster who just wants to do audio and that's fine. They don't want video. And from what I've seen, if you don't do video, there's no point doing social media clips because words on a screen don't work at all. What they call audiograms just don't go viral at all. But some people don't, they just want to do an audio podcast. That's fine. They want to build their growth that way, organically or with advertising, whatever way they do it. And that's fine. But then there's other people, like a lot of clients we work with, where it's a bigger strategy. And what we advise is you do a blog, you do a website, you have the social media clips. Because if you do want to market your brand, and that was the phrase you used that I like this, if you want to market your brand and it's a more, I hate that word holistic, I don't even know if it fits for this scenario, but if you want to have a bigger holistic ecosystem that covers everything, if you want to get in front of more eyeballs, this is one of the best ways to do it and to grow your podcast, whether that's a video or whether it's a TikTok or whether it's a audio only.
100%. I mean, I'm kind of a social media evangelist in a way, because I just think that the technology is so disruptive. There's so much potential, and you have opportunities just to be seen by millions of people if your content is strong enough. You know, there's no other kind of marketing that is that powerful, you know, and you don't get the same data as you do on your social media followers and your impressions. It's literally any video you post is a lottery ticket. You know, it could change your life if you post one clip that's cut the right way, that's posted at the right time, has the caption written correctly. You know, it's just the ROI on posting, and it's free. You don't even need to pay. You just can post as much as you like. It's such a huge opportunity, and you know, not just podcasters, but businesses still don't realize it and don't treat it with the importance that it deserves.
I've once got called Facebook famous, which to me was like, wait, what? It was like here in Saigon, and because I post, this was when I first started the podcast back in 2019, and you know, I just wanted everyone to hear it, and I still don't have any intention to be famous. It's quite weird when I get recognized every now and again, like every 3 months or 6 months, someone will be like, oh, hey, you're the guy from the podcast. I'm not going to lie, it's one of the coolest things ever when somebody recognizes you. But early on, somebody called me Facebook famous, and I was like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, everyone on Facebook knows who you are. And I was like, oh, that's weird. I don't really, because I don't think about it like that. And the other comment you made there about how you never know what's going to go viral. So recently, a few months ago, Vietnam beat Thailand in the final of the Asian Cup, which is like a massive, massive big deal. You know about it?
Yeah, I haven't told you this, but my girlfriend's actually Vietnamese, so I'm very tapped into Vietnam and what's happening there. Yeah.
Awesome.
I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was huge. And so I'd just gotten a new camera. I'd gotten the Osmo Pocket 3 for anyone who knows what that is. And I went out and I filmed the whole night, and I edited it right away because I was like, I've got to get this out right away because obviously I knew it was a hot topic. And I edited it and posted it. And my wife there was one bit of it. She's like, you know what partners are like? And she was completely valid. She's like, I don't really like that bit. I'm sitting weird and blah, blah, blah. And we're all like that. Men and women, we're all like that. And I was like, honestly, this is one of the funniest quotes I've ever said in my life. That was the long form video, got 150,000 views. I haven't even checked it recently. It's probably more. I got monetization off the back of it. It was just insane, the amount of comments, and it was really, really cool. It's like, what is going on? And I literally said to her sitting on the couch, I was like, don't worry, like 70 people will see it.
Yeah, it's incredible. Once you do have a piece of content that a wide audience finds valuable, the algorithms are going to push it because they want people engaging with good content and staying on their platform, you know? So if you can help these platforms meet their goal, they're going to reward you exactly like in this instance. Yeah, it's a perfect example of how it works.
Now, you also mentioned earlier on about sponsors, and monetization is one of the biggest questions for all podcasters. How do I monetize? And I've said before, if you get into podcasting for the money, then get out because you're in it for the wrong reasons, because it's not that easy to make any money from podcasts. But I would imagine, and I'd love to hear your take on this, that when you talked about building your social media channels from, I think it was like 3 and 4, 5,000, 10,000 up to over 100,000, I think you said. Is that, to me, that would be another monetization avenue. So you're not actually, people aren't sponsoring you. They're not sponsoring your podcast in the traditional sense that people think about at paying for ads. They're paying you because you have 100,000 social media followers. So is that another added benefit of social media content or on the short form video content?
Yeah, massively. Like the clients that I have that are full-time podcasters that earn good money from podcasting. They also have, large social media presences, and that is absolutely factored into the deals that they have with their sponsors and with their advertisers. Whether it's long-term or whether it's, getting approached for campaigns and influencer marketing type stuff. There's significant amounts of money to be made from having a large social media presence, and more and more companies are now investing in that space. So it's funny with the Between Two Beers guys, when I first started, they would have had no idea that they would be doing what they're doing now, which is, every week they're getting approached with social media content deals and campaign briefs. And this was totally unthinkable to them, a couple years ago. So it's really profitable if you do it right. And it's definitely another way that you can monetize as a podcaster.
And I know those traditional podcasters like me, it would be like a little bit of a knife in their heart. They're like, I don't want to do social media marketing. I just want to make money from my podcast. But if you want to make money, then it's definitely an avenue to go down. Marcus, this has been absolutely amazing. I've been so excited to talk to you. I've taken so much from this. I'm definitely going to be pestering you and messaging you and asking you to look at our clips and see how we're doing. I really, really cannot thank you enough for this. And thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Remember, we are on YouTube. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff. The best thing that you can do if you're listening right now is share it with someone else who makes a podcast or who wants to make a podcast. And even better still, get in touch with me, Neil at 7millionbikes.com, or just go to our website, 7millionbikes.com. You can book a call with me. I'd love to help you make the best podcast possible. So, Marcus, thank you so much for this. This has been incredible. Cheers.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Hi, my name is Sal Jeffries. I run the Mindset, Mood and Movement podcasts. I've been working with Neil at 7 Million Bikes for the whole of this year, literally from the start of my podcast to date. And I want to say a couple of things. So when we record the podcast, sometimes there are things that I need tweaking. There could be edits or clips. It's really simple. I give those instructions to Neil, he gets it sorted. There's sometimes a sound level differences between the guest mic and mine. Again, that's all sorted so the outcome is a really balanced sound. And also if there are issues with voice, little kind of sound interruptions, all those things that can distract a listener, Neil knows exactly what to do, cleans it up. The end result, a highly professional, beautiful sounding podcast without distraction. That's exactly what I want. I know my listeners do. So if you're interested in having that level of podcast and that kind of quality, Neil is a great guy and I highly recommend you speak to him.